Shows the level of true commitment, right? It's sunny and nice out there. It's a great day to be at the lake. It's also a great day to be in the house of the Lord, is it not? Amen. All right, we pick up here in 1 Samuel. It's where we're going to be studying for a while. And like I said, 1 Samuel has 31 chapters, so if I split them all in two, it gives me 62 sermons. I'm covered for a long time. And you say, but what happens if it gets dull? What other book of the Bible are you planning on going to? I mean, just kidding. We'll be in 1 Samuel for a while, though. I like 1 Samuel. It's got a lot of style to it. It's got a lot of literary style to it. All right, 1 Samuel chapter 1, starting in verse 21, and then we're going to read into chapter 2, stopping really at verse 10, and then we're going to glimpse just slightly at verse 11. I'm saving verse 11 for next week. Well, you won't show up now. Now you know. Oh, I blew my cliffhanger. Oh, it's going to rain next week. Chapter 1, verse 21. The man Elkanah and all his household went up and offered to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever." And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, "Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word." So the woman remained and nursed her son until he was weaned. When she had weaned him, she took him up with her along with a 3-year-old bull. Some of your text probably says 3 bulls. We will discuss that. Don't worry, I'm not making it up. An ephod of flour and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli. And she said, "Oh, my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." And he worshipped the Lord there. And Hannah prayed, saying, "My heart is exalted in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemy, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none beside you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proud. Let not the arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, the feeble bind on strength. Those who are full have hired themselves out for bread. Those who are hungry have ceased to be hungry. The barren is born 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills, and the Lord brings to life. The Lord brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap, to make them sit with princes, to inherit the seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off. For not by might shall man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces against them. He will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to his king and the exalted horn of his anointed. And real briefly, so you'll come back next week. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, and the boy was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli the priest. All right, so we pick up here. Last week we talked about Hannah and how she was barren. You had this weird interplay between Elkanah. Elkanah had 2 wives, which is no good situation, fellas. Just not. That's trouble to begin with. And he had one that could produce kids and one that couldn't. And the one that could produce kids was called the rival and would bitterly aggravate Hannah. Remember, just a little bit of review. She went to the temple one evening and is praying. And she is praying, and the heart of her conviction is so much that though her mouth is moving, no words come out. And Eli, the godly man, looks at her and assumes that she is, remember? Drunk. Assumes her situation from a distance. And her response was, I'm not drunk. I am grieved. I have no child, and I would like to produce one. And Eli blesses her, and the Lord hears her petition and opens her womb, and now she has a child, Samuel. And we pick up here in chapter 1, verse 21. The man Elkanah, as though there's confusion about what he was. But anyhow, that's just how they write it. And all his house went up to offer to the Lord yearly sacrifices and to pay his vow. Which vow is this? All firstborn males must be atoned for. 54 days after their birth, I believe it is. So Elkanah goes up to pay for the firstborn male and to offer his sacrifices at Shiloh. He honors the vow to God. Both he and Hannah have entered into a vow with God for a firstborn male, and he goes and he fulfills this essential rite. Now remember, this is in the period of the Judges. One of the great condemnations about this time in history is, anyone know? In the day of the Judges, when there was no king and men did what was right in their own eyes. And we will see that this is the model that is adopted by Eli and his two sons. Elkanah, being a righteous man, goes and pays the vow and offers his sacrifice, even though he knows when he goes he's going to run into two wretches by the name of Hophni and Phinehas. Now, notice what happens. Hannah does not go. And she said to her husband, as soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him up, that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. The boy is probably going to be weaned for 3 years. That's the typical weaning period in the Hebrew world. 3 years. So she's going to have the boy to the age of 3. It's a long weaning process, I know, but I don't make these rules. I just preach what is in the text. So, I just follow. My hands are tied. I just follow orders. Anyhow. When he's weaned, I'll bring him up. Notice what Elkanah says. Some brilliant words here. You can tell a guy that's got his house in order. And Elkanah says to her, do what seems best to you. It was a joke, folks. It's funnier when you laugh. Wait until you have weaned him, only that the Lord establish his word. So that the woman remained and nursed him until she had weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up. This is all straightforward text. Along with a 3-year... How many of y'all have a text that says 3 bulls? Okay. Well, we have here in this text, so you know I'm not making this up. 3 cows, 3 bulls. My text says a 3-year-old bull. What you have here is you have an argument between 3 major manuscripts. The Masoretic text, which is what almost all Old Testament texts are built upon, says 3 bulls. The Septuagint translation of the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek and the Dead Sea Scrolls say a 3-year-old bull. And so what they do is translators look at this and they weigh those manuscripts against one another. And this is one where the translators here made a bad choice in translation. Because typically when you take a bull, it's not an ephod of flour. She brings 3 times the amount of flour and 3 times the amount of wine for 1 bull. But if she brings 3, all the quantities align perfectly. So it is 3 bulls, just based upon the translation of the text. You say, well, how is your text trustworthy? Because mine notes it down here in the bottom. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Septuagint, the Syriac, and Masoretic text says 3 bulls. That's how they answer it. She brings up 3 bulls, and she brings it to the house of the Lord and the young child. And they slaughter the bulls, and they bring to Eli. Straightforward. Really kind of hard to make commentary on this except for the fact that she honors her vows in this manner. Notice what she does. She makes a vow to the Lord that this child will be in the service of God. She keeps this, even though this isn't the time of the judges where people quickly have forgotten what they do. Eli is a man of really kind of nefarious means, and so is his children. And so this would fit in textually, it would fit that she kind of could fudge on her command. Think about, folks, for a moment, the things we promise God. Not that this would ever happen. And then not do them. The oaths we make to God and then not complete them. God, if you'll give me a boy, an heir, a son, so that Elkanah would love me. Now, she already knows that Elkanah loves her. He's already said he's worth 10 males to her. She's willing to give this child back to God and see him once a year. Now, my mom might have been up for that trade. She might have been. She might go, yeah, I'll take 2 rookies to be named later for one Ashley Payne. And that's a distinct possibility because, as I've said, all the gray hairs on my mama's head I'm responsible for. But think about this for a moment. She has wanted a child. She has a rival that has aggravated her year after year after year after year. She's been accused of being drunk by the head priest. She gets the child, and she could go, well, I know I promised God this. But no, everybody else seems to be doing what's right in their own eyes. Why not? I got to do it. Right? She's waited so long for this child. She'll see this child once a year. For the rest of her life, she's going to dedicate this child to the work of the Lord forever. And not only that, she brings more than what she needs for the sacrifice. If you take the translation, she brings 3 bulls and all the extra stuff, an ephod of flour and the wine. That's more than she needs. They've already paid the vow to consecrate the boy. Wouldn't it be so easy just to simply go, everyone else is cheating the system? As a matter of fact, when we go and look at Hophni and Phinehas, there's a special fork that they have specially designed so they can steal more from God than they are allotted. But yet she brings more than she's supposed to. And then she leaves the child with those individuals. How many of you would leave your kids with people where you go, man, your morals are suspect? Because you've promised to leave him there at the temple and worship with the Lord there. See, we all begin to find justification for when we make God promises and then we don't want to do it. It's kind of like the kid that goes, hey, Lord, if you get me out of this horrible wreck, I'll be a missionary to the Congo. And then he goes, yeah, I don't want to be a missionary to the Congo. Well, it stinks to be you because you said it. Pony up and do it. She does. For this is, and she goes down, she sees Eli, and she says, alas, my Lord, as the Lord lives, I am the woman. I am the woman. Remember me? I am the woman standing here in your presence. You know, the one that you said was drunk. No, she doesn't really do that. She's far more gracious than that. I would probably say that. You know, I was the guy that you said was drunk. And for this child, I prayed to the Lord, and he granted my petition. Now notice that if you go back to the other text, back just last week's sermon, the text says she went there repeatedly, year after year after year, being provoked by her rival. This is the child God gave me after many years of petition, after you calling me a drunk. And I have kept my side of the obligation and am presenting him here to the Lord for service. Think about the obligations we make and whether or not we keep them all as we have prescribed to God. She could have easily had this wiped out. Why? Because it requires her husband to sign off on it. And he apparently did. He could have quashed this very early on, but he doesn't. Now notice the phraseology. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. I release all parental control and give him over to the Lord. Now notice, he worshiped the Lord there. The he would imply the young boy, not Eli. And this is going to be an interesting phrase. When we look in the next couple of chapters in 1 Samuel, we all see those movies where they have the weird cameras in different angles, and you'll see one person in the foreground, but you'll see people doing the wrong thing in the background, and then the camera will shift to what they're doing, and you see the person doing the right thing in the background. And so it shifts between who's in the foreground. That's really what's going on here in 1 Samuel. You see that even as a young boy, 3 years old, he begins to worship the Lord there. And then the next, at verse 11, talks about how the boy is ministering in the presence of Eli the priest. And then chapter 3 goes into the wretch of Hophni and Phinehas. And so you see this constant back and forth. The boy Samuel ministers before the Lord, but Hophni and Phinehas does this. Samuel worships before the Lord, but Hophni and Phinehas are doing this. You see this back and forth here within the text. And it's designed to demonstrate the goodness of Samuel. No, before we think Samuel's so great, later on Samuel falls into the exact same trap that Eli kind of does with his kids. But at least here, in this part, he is worshiping before the Lord. He is ministering before the Lord. But Hophni and Phinehas are taking advantage of the Lord. So we see this early kind of being alluded to early on. And then we get into what is possibly one of the earliest forms of Israelite poetry. The text is very brilliant, very beautifully worded Hebrew poetry. My heart exalts the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. Notice that the object of Hannah's delight is not herself. The object of Hannah's delight is not Samuel. The object of Hannah's delight is the Lord. He opens her womb. He allows her to conceive. He gives her a child, and she recognizes it and worships God appropriately, even above the appropriateness. And the object of her delight is not the boy. We all know parents that when they get that first child they wait a long time for, that child almost at times becomes worshipped. She gives the child up. My heart exalts in the Lord. My horn is exalted. How many of us could actually say that when we're giving up the one thing we have hoped for all our life and make this statement? She has just passed over parental guardianship from herself to the Lord, and will see this child once a year, and the first words out of her mouth are, my heart exalts in the Lord. I praise the name of the Lord. I am gladdened. My heart is exceedingly full of joy in the Lord. But you're giving up your child. I know, but He gave him to me. Think about that. The one thing she wanted, she's giving back to God, and she will see Him once a year. And yet she is glad at this. We would look at that and go, you're nuts. But if you look at it from God's economy, this is perfect. Why? Because she asks God, He remembers her, He opens her womb, He provides the child, and she fulfills the obligation out of a sense of worship. She also gets her dig in on her rival. My mouth derides my enemy. Not because she's a wicked person, but because I rejoice in the Lord. The Lord is the one who's given me victory over my enemy. Not me, but the Lord. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none beside you. There is none like the rock of our God. Again, amazing words for someone giving up the one thing they've wanted. How many of us could mouth this in giving up the one thing we've wanted? Now, if you ask me, I got a lot of one things I would like. Like, if I could just have an empty highway with no one on it. But then I would have to go somewhere. An unlimited credit card that I don't have to pay the bill on. That's all very selfish stuff, isn't it? It's about me fulfilling something that I want. She wanted a child to make her relationship more complete because she didn't have one, and she saw it as God's condemnation on her, and God had closed her womb. She gets it, and notice the praise that comes out of the mouth. Verse 3. I'm going to get to a couple more licks in real quick on Peninnah. Talk no more, very proud. Let not the arrogance come from your mouth. I have a kid too, and my kid is serving at the temple. Pretty much what she's saying. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by Him actions are weighed. Now notice the phraseology. Notice how this changes. The Lord is a God of knowledge, and actions are weighed. Bows of the mighty are broken. Now notice you're going to have a back and forth here. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength. In that economy, Peninnah was the better wife. She could produce heirs, and she had already produced male heirs. Hannah was barren. She couldn't produce anything. And notice that it's not in the strength of the bow that is necessary, but the feeble put on strength. How do they do it? If you look over on the side, you could write in the article, by Him, and the Him being God. By God, the mighty are broken down, but the feeble bind on strength. This is something basic that is taught to us throughout the text. Is it through the strength of arms? Is it through the strength of our hands that deliver us? Or is it through the work of someone else? Does He use the wise or the foolish things to confound the wise? He uses the small things. Those who are full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who are hungry cease to be hungry. See, in a very worldly thing, we look at the world, and the world looks at us, and some of the situations and the decisions we make and go, well, that makes absolutely no sense, because you're not doing what's necessary to be successful here. But our strength doesn't come from what's here, and the strength that doesn't come from the might of my arm. And my food that I buy for my family and the things that I earn do not come by the labors necessarily of my hand. They do, but they come from the gifts of God, and He gives them to me. And this child has come to me, and I have released it back. Francis Chan had a brilliant analogy. I showed it on Wednesday night. If you were here, you got to see it. If you're not, you look it up on YouTube. And the analogy is called rope. And he has this really long rope that goes off the stage and a little section about this long covered in red tape. And he says, we live in our economy of the way we do things for the stuff in the red, when really we should be living for all the long piece of the rope. Hannah was living for the long piece of the rope, not the little short piece that would have satisfied her selfishness. The barren has borne 7. Hannah has 6 kids, so I'm not really sure how that works out. But I think this is more of a figure of speech. This is poetic literature, poetic license. She who has many children is forlorn. And then the text makes a shift. This is more how the Lord's actions towards man is both positive and negative. Notice the situation. The Lord possesses the power to kill and the power to bring life. He brings down to Sheol, and He rises up. The Lord makes poor. The Lord makes rich. The Lord brings low. He exalts. These are things that He does, lest we think it's something we do. I have earned my wealth because of my good looks. Not that's going to happen. I have earned my wealth because I've worked hard. No. You have earned your wealth because the Lord has given it to you. The Lord could have easily taken it from you. See, when you look at this text, it puts the perspective of man in regard to the Lord. It's the Lord who kills. It's the Lord who brings life. It's the Lord who closes a womb. It's the Lord that opened the womb. It's the Lord that brings down to Sheol and raises up, who makes the rich and who makes the poor. And you say, well, that sounds kind of capricious. Okay. He brings low and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust. Notice this. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap. Places of lowly estate to make them what? Sit with princes. Inherit a seat of honor. The natural state of our lives is determined more about God and His interaction with us than our things we do with our own hands. It is God that is the prime mover. Every good thing comes from Him. He is the prime mover here. We have a secondary obligation in our response to that, but it is always God being the prime mover. Psalm 38 talks about how He knows us in our mother's womb, how He knits us together before there's a word on the tip of our tongue. He knows it. Lest we think so highly of ourselves. Hannah understands that it's not her and Elkanah that had the baby that made the baby. Yeah, they were both there. I got it. Kind of goes with baby making. But it's the Lord that caused the baby to happen. That's the difference. The pillars of the earth are the Lord's. And He has set the world on it. This whole world is on its axis and will not stop one day earlier than He decides to stop it. Which is why I really get really thrilled and tickled with all this doomsday philosophy that comes out of the environmentalist movement. Now, look, I'm not an I'm a conservationist. I don't believe I should go into the woods and shoot every deer, but I want to shoot every deer I'm going to eat. Tracking with me? I'm a conservationist. But a lot of the doomsday predictions that come out of the environmentalist movement has no reference to God in it at all. If we don't stop, the world's going to burn up and go. Really? You're kind of negating the power of God in this situation, are you not? Well, we don't believe in God. Well, there's your first problem with your model. The second problem with your model is that He is in total control of the earth. He's destroyed it once with flood and says He won't do it again. And the next time He's going to destroy it is when He comes again. So I think we're pretty good for a while. I remember being in the 80s, living into the fear that Ronald Reagan was going to do something and make the Russians mad, and they were going to launch, and we were going to. Remember the movie Red Dawn? The remake was horrible. Movie Red Dawn. Yeah, we all remember that. Blah, blah. And then there's a movie called America that had a dual ending that had Chris Christopherson in it, and we had all these doomsday predictions. And what's the one? It's black and white. Dr. Strangelove with the nuclear bomb, and Slim Pickens rides it right into the... We had a fill of those, right? We all lived as some guy was going to go nuts, push the button, and off we go. And destroy the whole earth. That'd be great, except for the fact that you're not accounting for the fact that you have a sovereign God who has established the earth on His axis and has established the time and place for all things and will not bring them out unless it is part of His will. He has put the earth where it is, and He is in total control of it. He wasn't sitting on September 11th at home watching Comedy Central, eating Cheerios, and a news flash whipped over and says, I better switch to CNN. Dude, didn't see that happening. That's a deistic God. We serve a sovereign God who by His actions bring the mighty low and elevate the poor in spirit. It's His as the prime mover. Verse 9 and 10 Very interesting aspect of verse 9 and 10, because some see it as having a foreshadowing to Christ. Oh, just blew it for you. Dang, I got to stop doing that. He will guard the feet of the faithful ones, but the wickedness shall be cut off into darkness. For it's not by might that men shall prevail. That kind of goes counterintuitive to the way the world thinks, right? The best defense is a good offense. Ronald Reagan basically looks at the evil empire and says, we may not be able to match you tank for tank, but we can outspend you. We will run your economy into the ground. Khrushchev's saying, we will bury you, and we respond with, we'll run your economy into the ground. Why? Because we live by the motto that might is right. But in God's economy, it is not by might that things are done. Notice when He comes to deliver the world, He sends a man who is God incarnate, who allows Himself to be executed for our sins. When He simply could have just went, you know what, I'm tired of you people. Y'all are like an itch I can't scratch. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken into pieces, and against them He will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth, and He will give strength to His king and to the horn of His anointed. Now this is interesting phraseology, because you have the phraseology of the king before there is a king, and you have the mention of an anointment before there's an anointed king. And if you go over and look at Luke chapter 1 through 46 through 56, Mary in her song has some phraseologies that are similar to what's going on here in Hannah's song. And so a lot of scholars say this is a possible foreshadowing of the coming Christ. And if you go back and look at all of 9 and 10, you see where some of this seems to kind of be fulfilled out in the coming Christ. He could have come and delivered the world very mightily and wiped the Romans out. And this is what caused the Jews a lot of consternation, because they were looking for what type of king? Conquering king. And yet they got the suffering servant. And so you might possibly have this foreshadowing here in this text. I think it works pretty well. Would I be willing to die on a hill for this? No, I think it could also be talking about the coming of the Davidic line. Why? Because David's anointed and David becomes king. Soon after Saul was anointed, who was a flop, was he not? So you have here in this prayer, in this piece of poetic literature, a woman who is giving up the one thing she has prayed for the Lord from, who has spent years being barren, and recognizes who gives it to her and then returns it back to the one that gave it to him. That would be like us being absolutely financially destitute, be given the money to eliminate our debt, and signing it over to the church. And we would go, you're nuts. Have you seen the pastor? It's a joke. It's funnier when you laugh. She gets the one thing she wants. She gives it back. And instead of being sour in spirit, instead of being angry at heart, the Lord should have canceled my debt and let me have it. He knows how long I've been waiting on this. Willingly gives it back, and willingly brings more than she needs to pay for the child, and willingly then sings this song openly. Many scholars believe this was sung openly at the temple in Shiloh. I find that amazing. Give you an example. My sister had a child. It's been 13 years ago. He would have been 13 last week. He spent 18 months in a hospital and died at the age of 2. At the funeral, my sister gets up and sings a song of praise. At the funeral, sings a song of praise to the Lord for having a child who she spent 18 months sleeping in hospital chairs, sitting beside all night and all day. Have you ever slept in a hospital chair? Do it for 18 months. And sings praises to the Lord when many would be having vile accusations against the Lord. What do we see in this text? We see a woman who gets what she prays from the Lord. She returns it to the Lord, and the words coming out of her mouth are not anger towards the Lord, but absolute praise and solace for the goodness and greatness of God. Yet we live in a culture that at times would have looked at this and say, this woman's nuts. She should have kept the baby and run. What's our attitude about the things God gives us? Are they ours or are they His? See, this piece of poetry, if you missed it, indicates that they're His. And He gives them to us. And He can take them from us. And what is our response to the things God gives? Hey, God, thank you for what you've given me. Now it's mine. Or, God, thank you for giving me what you've given me, and let me utilize this for the furtherance of your glory. What's our response? It's hard for me to say, too, because there are things that I would love to have the Lord give me, and I would be very upset if He took them from me. And then I would have to read this passage and feel convicted for that behavior. What's our response? Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this time to come before you. We thank you for the example of Hannah, who in the moment of great despair and great desperation prayed for a son. You hear, you provide, and out of honor and praise, she returns the one thing she wants back to you. Help us, Heavenly Father, to focus in on the understanding that all the things that we possess, everything we own, all the things that we have and are given to us by your good pleasure for your great purpose. We ask for your blessing upon us and for your watch care over us. We ask for these things in your name we pray. Amen. All right, folks, let's go ahead and